this is a modeling lesson. We see them every once in a while. They work a little differently than our regular lessons. You've seen them last year too, because if we look, we don't have examples. We don't have example 1, example 2. If you look at page 209, we have the words build it. Then if you look at 210, we have the words try it in blue at the top. Oh, you know what? Yours is probably different because, or does it still? Okay, good, it does. It just looks different. We have the words try it in the big green box at the top. And then towards the bottom, we have talk about it. The build it and the try it are examples 1 and 2. The talk about it is like the guided practice. Then if we turn the page again, we have practice it on page 211 and apply it on page 212. Practice it and apply it are the independent practice. And then, of course, the homework is labeled the same. It's just labeled my homework. But, so these look a little different, but they still have the same parts. They still have 2 examples, a guided practice, independent practice, and homework. It just is named something different, but it still works the same. So, whenever we have these types of lessons, it means we're going to be modeling. Now, this might be something that we have in our hands, or it might be a model that we have to draw. In today's lesson, it will be a model we have to draw because I don't have enough base 10 blocks for all of us to do this lesson using the base 10 blocks. Because for some of them, you need like 15 10 rods, and I don't have enough 10 rods for everybody to have 15. I have enough for everybody to have like 10, I think. So, we're going to be drawing base 10 blocks. But you guys know how to draw base 10 blocks. Remember, 100 flat is a big square. A 10 rod is a skinny rectangle, a tall skinny rectangle, not a short, wide. That's not a 10 rod. I mean, yes, you can hold a 10 rod like that, but that's not how we're going to draw it because that would take up way too much space. And then a ones cube is a little square. Now, thousands cubes we would draw as a cube, but you won't need to draw thousands cubes for this lesson. So is everybody confident on how to draw the base 10 blocks? I'm not even sure if you need hundredths flats, but we know how to draw them. A hundredths flat is a big square. How many does it have? How many does a hundredths flat represent? Carla?
It represents the tens you added to make one.
Okay, Carla, listen to my question. What does a hundredths flat represent? How many does a hundredths flat represent?
100.
100. How many does a 10 rod represent? Victoria? 10. How many does a ones cube represent? Michaela? 1. And if we see it, which I don't think we do in this lesson, how much does a thousands cube represent? Zari?
1,000.
1,000. So, you will be using these to do this lesson. In the build it and the try it, the 2 examples, they do it for you. Talk about it. I think, if I'm remembering correctly, you don't have to draw more. You just write in words what you're drawing, what you're doing. So you're not going to have to use models for the talk about it. But, okay, so for numbers 3 through 8 on the guided practice or the practice it, you have room to draw your models. You have to draw small though, so that you can fit them. You have to draw small and neatly. This is where it is extremely important to do this neatly. Because if you're not doing this neatly, you might have too many or too few of your base 10 blocks, and then you end up with the wrong answer. For numbers 9 through definitely 11, you will need to use your separate sheet of paper on the independent practice, the apply it page. Numbers 9 through at least 11, maybe 12, you will need to do your models on your separate sheet of paper. And then for your homework, if you look at your homework, I'm telling you this right now, so you better remember. Ethan, make sure that you're following along. we're looking at the homework page on page 213. You can see the directions say multiply, draw models if needed. Cross out that if needed because you are going to draw models. You are practicing this skill. So make sure on your homework page where the directions say draw the models if needed, cross out the words if needed. Put a big black mark over the words if needed. Draw a big black mark over the words if needed because you must draw models. Ethan, are you listening? Did you do that? Did you do what I just asked you to do? On your homework, the directions say multiply, draw models if needed. Cross out if needed. Now look at page 214. At the top, it says multiply, draw the models if needed. Use your pencil, cross out if needed. Do a big cross out like this. Not just a little like that, where maybe you might miss it. Do a big cross out. Normally I tell you just do a little cross out, but this time do a big cross out. Then look at numbers 9 through 13. You have word problems. At the top, it says problem solving, mathematical practice, use algebra, write an equation to solve. So yes, you must write an equation, but also I want you to write, draw models. All models will be drawn for homework. Every single model will be drawn on a separate sheet of paper. Okay, once you're done with that, go ahead and go back to the Build It. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, that means we don't have to talk about it later. I hope everybody did that because if you turn it into me without the models drawn on your separate sheet of paper, it will not be good. The highest grade you can get is a 50. And that's only if you got every single answer right, which if you're not drawing the models, you probably didn't. Okay, once you're done, go back to page 209 and Smith, please read this sentence under the title.
You can use base 10 models to multiply by one-digit numbers.
So that's all that's telling us is that, well, we can use these base 10 blocks to multiply. Please make sure that you're on page 209, ready to follow along. Okay, everybody, finger or pencil on the Build It. Just like you would example 1, we just have Build It instead of example 1. If your pencil is on Build It, your hand needs to be on your pencil. Okay, read in your head while I read out loud. Remember, we're going to read it. We're going to find the question, find all the important information, underline, circle, box it, label it. So that you can do it when you get to the word problems. Because once we find all that important information and figure out what it means, is it hard to solve the problem at that point? No. The part that takes the most time is figuring out what information do I need, how do I set it up in an equation. So that's why we're doing this, so that when you get to your work, you know exactly where to look, what to look for, and how to use that to make your equation. So read in your head while I read out loud. Grace and her friends are at the mall. They see 3 rows of parked cars. There are 23 cars in each row. How many cars are there altogether? So, let's underline our question. How many cars are there altogether? Once I've underlined my question, I know my first step is to look for the word that comes after how many, how much, what is the difference between, whatever. And I see cars. So I'm going to put a second underline there. I know that that is the unit my answer is going to be in. So I'm going to label it with AU for answer unit. Now I look at my question, I don't see any other unit. I don't see the word each. I don't see times as many. So I'm not quite sure what I need to do yet. Sorry, I know you don't have to show me that. I know. I want you to be focusing because when you're showing it to me on the camera, you're not looking at it and focusing on what it is. So now I need to go back through and I need to read my problem so that I can find any other important information. Carla, if your hand is up, please put it down and focus. When your hand is up, I've said this a million times, when your hand is up, you're not thinking about what I or somebody else around is saying. You are thinking about what your question is, which means you're missing everything else. Okay, let's go back and read the question. Grace and her friends are at the mall. I don't see cars. I don't really see a number. I don't really see my answer unit yet. So I'm not sure if that's important. I'm not going to box, underline, circle, anything. I'm going to keep going. Please make sure that you're sitting up. Zari, I know that you've been having problems with your internet, but I have noticed that that tends to happen after I say something to you, like correct you in some way. So I'm starting to think that maybe it's not happening on accident. So just keep that in mind, please. Okay, so I already know Grace and her friends are at the mall. Doesn't have anything that tells me right now, hey, you need to circle this, underline a box, or whatever. So let's keep going. Maybe that'll be important. Maybe not. Even, please scoot in and pay attention. They see 3 rows of parked cars. Well, I see cars, but I don't see a number before it. So let's keep going. There are 23 cars in each row. Now I see my answer unit cars with a number before it. So I know 23 cars is going to be important. I also see the word each. Each always tells me I am multiplying or dividing. I don't know which one I'm doing yet. And then right after the word each, I see the word row. I know that whatever comes after each is usually telling me my other unit. So I'm going to label it with OU for other unit. I still don't see a number, but I remember when I read that sentence, they see 3 rows of parked cars. I saw my other unit row with a number before it. So that means 3 rows is going to be important. So now I know that I know what my numbers in my equation are going to be. They're going to be 3 and 23. I know I'm either multiplying or dividing. So now I need to look and think, okay, I know my answer is going to be cars. Is my answer going to be higher than 23 cars or lower than 23 cars? If there are 3 rows and each row has 23 cars, well, that means in the end I have to end up with more than 23 cars. Because if there are 23 cars in each row and there's 3 rows, well, I'm definitely going to end up with a bigger number, which means that I am multiplying. When I multiply, does it matter what order I put the factors in? No, so I'm done. I know my numbers, 3 and 23. I know my operation, multiplication. So all I have to do is write my equation, 3 times 23. I could also write my equation as 23 times 3, and it wouldn't make a difference. But our math book gives us 3 times 23, so we're just going to write it 3 times 23. So now what I have to do is step 1. Model the larger factor. No, actually erase that. I think that'll get confusing. It worked in the past, but I think it's going to get confusing. So never mind. Usually I added an extra step where you would model the larger factor first, then this would be 2 and this would be 3, but I don't think we're going to do that this year. So, step 1 is to model your problem. So we know 3 times 23, multiplication is the same as repeated addition, right? Which means we're taking one factor, usually our larger one, and we're adding it the number of times our smaller factor is. So we would take 23 and add it 3 times. 23 plus 23 plus 23. Well, when we model addition using base 10 blocks, we just model the first number with base 10 blocks, then model the second number, then count how many we have altogether. Well, we're doing the same thing. We're going to model 23, and then we're going to repeat it 1, 2, 3 times. So 23 looks like what with base 10 blocks? 23 looks like what with base 10 blocks? If we use base 10 blocks to model 23, what does it look like? Michaela? 2 10 rods and 3 1s cubes. So go ahead, even though it's in your book, I want you to use your pencil to trace it so that you have that muscle memory. So we're going to model 23 using 2 10 rods and 3 1s cubes. 1, 2, 3. Now that models 23. To model 3 times 23, we have to repeat it 3 times. So here's our first time. Here's our second time. And here's our third time. Oh, sorry. That's still our second time. Sorry. So we've got 23 once, twice, and we're modeling it our third time. And 3 times. We know this is the same as 23 plus 23 plus 23. So we are solving 23 plus 23 plus 23. Now we need to circle the ones and count the number of ones. So let's circle the ones. Here's one group of ones, another group of ones, and another group of ones, and count them. Once we count them, we'll put the number of ones in our place value chart. So count with me. Remember, don't count until my finger is on it. 1, 2, 3. Zari, make sure you're counting. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So how many 1s cubes do I have, class? 9. So in my place value chart, I'm going to put 9 in the 1s place. Now, step 2 is to circle the 10s and count the number of 10s. Now, we're not going to retrace this because when you do your problem, you don't need to then draw it again just to do the 10s. You can use your same drawing to count the 10s. But we will go ahead and circle them here so that we can see that's what step 2 is. So we modeled drawing the base 10 blocks. But when you do your own model, you're not going to draw it again just to circle the 10s. You can do the same one. But let's go ahead. We still have, oh, you know what? You know what they did? I'm sorry. Go back to step 1 and erase that 23 plus 23 plus 23. Because here we're only adding the 1s. So how many 1s do I have circled in this first model of 23, class? 3. How many 1s do I have in this second model of 23? 3. How many 1s do I have in my third model of 23? 3. 3 plus 3 plus 3 is what, class? 9. Now, step 2, we're going to circle the 10s. So we're going to look at each model of 23 because we know each of these represents 23, and we're going to circle just the 10s. So there's the 10s in my first model, the 10's in my second model, and the 10's in my third model. Now we need to count the number of 10's. How many 10 rods do we have in this first model? Cullen?
2.
2. Why is the answer not 20? Why is the answer to what is the number of 10 rods not 20? Zadie, can you help her?
The question you asked was how many 10 rods, not how many one.
Good. Exactly. I asked how many 10 rods. There are only 2 10 rods. If I'd asked how many these 2 10 rods represent, then the answer would be 20. But I'm not asking how many are in these 2 10 rods. I'm just asking how many 10 rods are there. How many 10 rods do I have in this second model of 23, class? 2.
2.
How many 10 rods do I have in this third model of 23, class?
2.
2.
2.
2 plus 2 plus 2 is what, class?
6.
6. So how many 10's do I have, class?
6.
6. So I'm going to put 6 in the 10's place in my in my place value chart. Now I know if my model 3 times 23, where I took 23 and repeated it 3 times, has 9 1's and 6 10's, then 3 times 23 is what, class?
69.
3 times 23 is what, class?
69.
69. I heard somebody say 26, but it's not 26, it's 69. So 3 times 23 is 69, which meant Grace and her friends see how many cars? Class?
69.
69.
69 cars. Okay, everybody with me? Not too bad, right?
Right.
The part that's going to take longest is just drawing the models.
Yes.
But you still need to be neat. Don't be like, this is taking forever. Let me hurry up through these models. Because if you're not being careful, you're going to end up with too many or too little, and then you're going to end up with the complete wrong answer. Okay. Helper number 1, please sanitize, erase, sanitize. Okay, everybody, finger or pencil on the try it. The words try it. The question says, find 2 times 32 using models. Do we have a real world problem where we have to pick out the important information? No. The point of picking out the important information is to find the numbers that we need and the operation that we need. If they tell us it, we don't have to find it. It's already right there. So, step 1, model 2 times 32, which means I model 32 and repeat it how many times, class? 2. I model my larger number with base 10 blocks, and then I repeat it the smaller factor number of times. Because I could take 2 and model it 32 times, but which one's going to take less time? Is it going to take less time to model 2 and then repeat it 32 times, or is it going to take less time to model 32 and repeat it 2 times? Which one? Zari.
32, then model 2.
Good. So, first let's model 32. How do we model 32? How do we model 32 using base 10 blocks? Aaron. A little louder. Good. So to model 32, so do this so you get that muscle memory. Trace it. You use 3 10 rods. And 2 1's cubes. So there we have 32. But to model 2 times 32, we have to do it twice. We model the larger factor and repeat it the smaller factor number of times. So we've got 132, and now we have 2 2 32s. So there, step 1, we modeled 2 times 32. We took our larger factor, 32, and repeated it the smaller factor number of times, which is 2. So we've got 32 twice. Step 2, circle the ones, then count the ones, then complete the place value chart. So let's look at our first model of 32. Circle the ones. Let's look at our second model of 32 and circle the ones. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 ones. So there are how many ones? Class? 4. So in my place value chart, in the ones place, I put 4. Excuse me. Are you ready to move on to step 3? Is everybody ready to move on to step 3? Step 3, circle the tens, count the number of tens, then complete the place value chart. We're doing the exact same thing. We're just moving on to the tens. Should I count the tens before I count the ones? Should I count the tens before I count the ones? No. Why? Smith?
Because if you have to regroup and you do the tens first, you're going to get all confused.
Exactly.
And you're going to get the wrong answer.
Exactly, because if I have to regroup and I start with the tens, well then I might be missing out on a 10 that I had to regroup from the ones place. So always start with the ones. Remember we did that in addition and subtraction. It's the same for multiplication. You always start with the ones in addition, subtraction, and multiplication. Division's different, but we'll learn that in 2 chapters. Okay, so now circle the tens. Let's circle the tens in our first model of 32, and let's circle the 10 in our second model of 32. And now let's count them. Count with me. 1, 2, 3. Count with me, please. Let's start again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So there are how many tens, class?
6.
6.
Which means in our place value chart, we put a 6 in the tens place. If there are 6 tens and 4 ones, 2 times 32 equals what, class?
64.
64. There you go. Is everybody with me? So you're going to be doing this on your own when you get to the independent practice and the homework. But instead of drawing the model 3 times, like modeling it, then drawing it again to circle the ones, then drawing it again to circle the tens, you don't have to do that. You can just draw it once. You can use your color. You get to use 2 colored pencils. Draw it once with your pencil. Circle the ones with one color. Circle the tens with another color. Keep it the same every time. Like the ones always get circled with with the same color. The tens always get circled with the same different color. Does everybody understand that? So like at the beginning of doing your math independent practice, you're going to choose 2 colored pencils. Like say I pick a pink one and a blue one. Well, I'm always going to circle the ones with pink, and I'm always going to circle the tens with blue. Does everybody understand what I mean by that? We'll talk more about it when we get to the independent practice, which will probably be after music, but we'll see. Quickly, Victoria, I hope that you were thinking about my question, about what I was saying and not your question.
So, I understand that we circle.
Everybody, finger, pencil on the talk about it. Now this is where we don't actually show, this is where we only write words. Now sometimes we have to write a number, but our answer is in words. So number 1, how would you model 2 times 22? I'm not going to draw a model of 2 times 22. I need to explain in words how I would model it. So I want everybody to take a minute to think. How would you do that? Carla, please take a minute to think. How would you do that? Tell me in words. I know that you know how to draw the model. Well, tell me in words how you would draw it. Victoria. Base 10 blocks are all of these.
10 rods.
Okay, well that tells me how to model 22. So, but how do I model 2 times 22? So in words, Victoria told us, draw 2 10 rods and 2 1s cubes. Well, that tells us this part, the 22, but how do we take that and show 2 times 22? So Victoria has part of our answer. We just need to add on to her answer to fully answer the question. Kingston.
Well, here's what I would say. I would say Victoria's answer, but like, you have to do it twice.
Good. Excellent. Model 22 using 2 10 rods and 2 1s cubes then repeat it, oops, not repeated, repeat it twice. So do you see how for most of you, that's exactly what you were thinking. You were even probably thinking it in the same words. So all you have to do when you write your thinking in words is just think about the problem and write the word that you are thinking. You probably thought to yourself, okay, well I would model 22, I would use 2 10 rods and 2 1s cubes, and then I would do it again. You were probably thinking almost those exact words. Some words may have been a little different. So when you're modeling your when you're writing down your thinking, you're just taking those thoughts and writing the words. You already have them in your head, so you're just going to write them down. That's all you're doing. Okay, number 2. Now this is where there's not necessarily a correct answer. This might be different for all of you. It might end up somehow being the same for all of you. Let's look at number 2. Zari, please tilt your book down. I would like to see your independent practice right now. More. All the way. Okay, Zari, that's 10 points off of your homework. Number 2. Would you rather use base 10 blocks, counters, or mental math to model activity 1? That was the, this one. Sorry, this is activity 1. So would you rather use base 10 blocks, like what we've been doing in this lesson, to model 2 times 22, counters, which means like an array, or mental math, which means in your head, to model 2 times 22? Why? So think about your answer. Think about your answer. Once you have your answer and you're proud to share it with everybody, raise your hand. Which one would you rather use? Base 10 blocks, counters, or mental math, which means you're doing it all in your head? Zadie.
I would use mental math. I would use mental math.
Why?
Because I am better at doing it in my head because I'm not good at explaining things.
Well, you don't have to explain things. And you can be good at explaining things. You just have to write them. So it's not that you guys are not good at explaining things, because you are. You just don't want to explain them, because then you're not done. And think about doing mental math. Sometimes it's hard to keep it all together, especially when you're just learning the concept. Please put your hands down when I'm speaking. Those of you who are putting your hands up while I'm speaking, I will not call on you. I've decided. Even if you put your hand down, I will not call on you, because you're not listening to what I'm saying. So if I call on you, there's a very high risk that you are not going to answer the question I'm asking, because you're not listening to what I'm saying. You're thinking about what you want to tell me, which may not be what I'm asking. Using mental math when you are just learning a concept, you may be able to do it, but it's not the best idea because you are just learning the concept. So you have to keep those numbers in your head as well as all the steps. And you have to try to keep them all in the order. Once you are confident, once you are really good at a concept, well then you don't have to remember the steps every time. You just know what to do. So it's much easier to keep the numbers together. But if you don't know the steps yet and you're still learning, you have to keep it all together in your head, and it's not the easiest. So you may like to use mental math better, but make sure that it's for a good reason, because you already know the concept, and having to use models or counters takes too long when you already know the concept. None of you know this concept yet, especially because, I can tell because based on your basic facts drills. So you need to be using models until we get to that point. So let's take out mental math because we're not ready for that. We have 5 more minutes, we can finish this. We're not ready for mental math yet. So what I want to ask, I should have said this. I think I usually do this, I just forgot. Would you rather use base 10 blocks or counters, and why? So once you have a good answer that you're proud to share, raise your hands. I want some, because it's the people with their hands raised right now are the ones who raise their hands while I'm speaking. So would you rather use base 10 blocks or counters to model 2 times 22? Or would you rather, oh yeah, and why? So think about if you were using counters, you'd have to do an array. Think about if you're using base 10 blocks, you're doing what we use today. Which one would you rather use? Come on, guys, you should all be able to come up with an answer to this. If you're just sitting there, it's because you're not really thinking about it. Which one would you rather use? Aaron?
I would use,
Louder.
I would use base 10 blocks.
Why?
Because to me, base 10 blocks are easier to use than counters.
Why?
Because if I make an array of counters, it's more confusing to use.
Why? Zadie, can you add on to that? Why maybe using counters would be more confusing?
Because sometimes if you don't write the array right, it gives you the wrong answer.
Okay.
And having base 10 blocks, it'll be more, you'll have a higher chance of getting it accurate.
Okay. Why? We're thinking of problems that could happen with arrays right now. If you draw an array for 2 times 22, what does it look like? What would an array for 2 times 22 look like? Okay, so now I know that you guys are just guessing because you don't know what an array is. If you drew an array for 2 times 22, what would it look like? Smith?
2 rows of 22 or 22 columns of 2 rows.
So that would mean you would need, we'll say rows and columns. You would need 2 rows and there would be 22 in each column. How long is that going to take? A long time. If you're writing 2 rows of 22 columns, you may get lazy or sloppy and you don't have 22 in each column, which is like what Zadie said. I just wanted further, so examples. This is what I'm trying to get you guys to do, is tell me the words, but also tell me the answer, but also give me examples. This is what I'm trying to get you to do in every class, because a full, complete answer not only answers the question, but also gives more detail. Like, this is what could happen if we do it incorrectly. This exact thing. When I'm writing 22 columns, I might forget a couple of the counters. Whereas base 10 blocks at this point are a lot easier because you don't have to draw 22 little pieces. You just draw 2 big pieces and 2 little pieces. So, for now, at this point in your math life, base 10 blocks would probably be the easiest. Because now that we're getting into bigger numbers, arrays are not really the best thing to use because then you'd have to have like 22 columns or rows. And that's just kind of silly. Mental math, you're not there yet because you don't actually know step by step how to do the multiplication just using paper and pencil, no models. So for now, I would say base 10, oops, blocks are best because the 10s and 1s are grouped so we don't have to draw a lot of counters, comma, and we don't know the steps to do it mentally yet. Does everybody agree with that answer? If you really think about it, do you agree? Because at this point in your math career, if you say mental math is the best to use, it's probably not for the best reasons. Because do you know the steps yet? So is that a smart thing to do when you don't know the steps to doing multiplication with multi-digit numbers? Now, if we were just doing basic facts, I would say, yeah, mental math is definitely the best way to do it so that you don't have to spend forever drawing a model. But when we're multiplying multi-digit numbers, is mental math the best way to do it right now? Probably not. Especially once we get into regrouping. Okay, so once you're done with that, go ahead and put your math book away. You can put your extra sheets of paper in your math book, kind of as a bookmark for right now. We will do the independent practice after music. And at the top, write more examples. Math 4.3, which means chapter 4, lesson 3. And then today's date, October 21st, 2020. Go ahead and get out your 2 colors of colored pencil. Forgot about that.
The same one.
Okay, so on your paper, what we're going to do is we're just going to practice. I'm going to give you problems. You're each going to get one, and you're going to practice following the steps. Does everybody understand? Everybody, Mason, please. Everybody's going to do all of these on your paper. Okay. So our first example is 11 times 5. 11 times 5. So go ahead and write that problem. You have your math book out looking at page 210 because I want you to be following these steps. Mason, what do we do first? Look at your steps on page 210. Go slow, go slow, go slow. What's step 1? No, it's oh, okay, yeah, I remember. Okay, I'll give you a minute, okay? So I'll put you back in. I'll pick somebody else. Aaron, what do we do first? Look, we're looking at the steps on 210. The steps on 210 because they give us that first step. What do we do first?
Model 11 times 5.
We model 11 times 5. What does that mean we do? Does that mean we model 5 or do we model 11?
We model
11. How do we model 11?
We draw 1 10 rod.
1 10 rod
And 1 1.
and 1 1's cube. So now we have 11. Do I also draw 5 ones cubes?
No.
No. What does this times 5 mean?
It means you draw that. It means you model 11 5.
Good. I model my larger factor the number of times the smaller factor tells me. So I modeled 11. My smaller factor is 5, so I need to repeat it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now what do I do? Go ahead and put a line so that you can put your answer there. Now what do I do, Aaron?
You count how many ones.
So I take one of my colors. I'm going to use blue for ones. And I do what?
You circle all the ones.
I circle all the ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So how many ones do I have?
5.
Where does that go in my answer?
It goes in the ones.
In the ones place. So the number of ones is what goes in the ones place. Now, what do I have to do, Aaron?
You have to count how many tens you have.
So I have to take my other color, I'm going to use green, and I have to do what with my other color?
You have to circle the tens.
Circle all the tens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now that I've circled them, what do I do?
You count how many you have.
How many did I have?
5.
Where does that 5 go in our answer?
In the tens.
I had 5 tens, so it goes in the tens place. That means 11 times 5 is
55.
55. Very good. Yes.
My orange isn't really working.
Okay.
I've been having to hold it down.
Okay,
Circle.
so maybe just switch. Quickly though. Okay, everybody understand this first practice problem. Okay, let's move on to another one. Oh good, this is erasing well. I am erasing, you are not. You are just moving down. Okay, our next one. Let's do 34 times 2. What do I do first, Victoria?
Model 34 times 2.
So I model 34 times 2. Does that mean I model 34 with ones cubes, or do I model 2 with ones cubes?
34.
I model 34. I'm sorry, base 10 blocks, not ones cubes, because otherwise that would be crazy. So do I model 34 with base 10 blocks? What does 34 look like with base 10 blocks?
3 10 rods.
3 10 rods. 1, 2, 3.
4
1, 2, 3, 4. So now I have 34. Now do I model 2? Huh?
No,
No. What do I have to do? What does that 2 mean?
do it again.
I have to repeat my model for 34 2 times. So I've got 1. Now let me model it again. Good. So I take my larger factor, 34, and I model it the number of times my smaller factor tells me. So I model it twice. 34, I repeat it twice. Now what do I do, Victoria?
You take your color pencil or color marker, whatever, and then you circle the ones.
So I'm going to take my blue marker from earlier. Mason, I don't know what you're doing, but that's not what you should be doing. You only need your 2 colored pencils out and your pencil, nothing else. So I take my blue marker from earlier and I find all my ones. Okay, so I'm going to circle my ones. Now what do I do?
Now you circle your
Oh.
tens.
What do I have to do first? Why did I circle those? Sorry, don't forget your line. Why did I circle those, Victoria?
To show that they're 1 and 3.
Well, what do I do with them? Now that I've circled them, what do I do with them?
You add
Well, I just count them, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Where does that 8 go? In the ones place. Now what?
Now we have to circle the 10.
I take my other color, my green, and I circle the 10s. Now what do I do?
Now you count the 10.
I count the 10s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Where does that number go?
In the 10th place.
In the tens place. So that means, Victoria, that 34 times 2 is
68.
68. Everybody with me? Let's keep going. Carla, I have 21 times 4. What is step 1?
Model 21 times 4.
How do I do that? Do I model 21 with base 10 blocks, or do I model 4 with base 10 blocks?
You do not model 4, so that means you model 21.
How do I model 21 using base 10 blocks?
You model the 2 with the 10 blocks and the 1 with the 1 block.
So how many 10 rods do I need?
You need 2 10 rods.
2 10 rods. 1.
One.
And how many ones cubes?
1.
1. Okay, now do I model 4? Carla, do I model 4?
No.
No. What does that 4 tell me to do?
You are going to model the same number like we did first.
Well, what do you mean? What does the 4 tell me to do?
The 4 tell us to model 21 4 times.
Good. Remember, we model the larger factor, we repeat it the smaller factor times. So I modeled 21, now I need to repeat it 4 times. I have my first time, 2, 3, 4. Okay, Carla, what now?
We use the same color as we drawn.
So we're going to use our same color for our ones, and what are we going to do with it?
We're gonna circle the ones.
We're going to circle all the ones. Okay, I circled the ones. What do I do with them now?
You add them up.
I count them. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 ones. So what goes in my ones place?
You put 1 in your 1 place.
Am I going to put 1 in my ones place? How many ones cubes did I have, Carla?
You put 2. You put 4 in your 1
Good.
place.
I had 4. Smith, please don't do that. I had 4 ones cubes. So I'm going to put 4 in my ones place. Okay, now what?
You now circle how many 10s you have.
So I take my other color for the 10s, and I circle all the 10s. Now I've circled the 10s, so what do I do now, Carla?
You count them up.
I count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So Carla, what goes in the 10th place?
We put 8 in the 1 place.
In the what?
In the 10 place.
We put 8 in the 10th place. So that means 21 times 4 is what, Carla?
21 times 4 equals 80. 84.
Very good. 21 times 4 equals 84. Okay. Carla, don't forget to mute yourself.
Yes, ma'am.
Oops, I don't know why I made such a long line. 63 times 1. Cullen, what is the first step?
Model 63 times 1.
Model 63 times 1. Okay, do I model 63 or do I model 1 or do I model both?
Model 63.
I model 63. So how do I model that?
6 10 blocks,
Rod.
rods, and 3 ones cubed.
Good. 6 10 rods. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1 ones cube. 1. Okay, now do I model another ones cube?
No.
No. What does this 1, this smaller factor, tell me to do?
Means how many times you do it.
How many times I model my larger factor, 63? So how many times do I need to model 63?
Once.
Once. Now what?
Now circle the ones.
So I take my ones color and I circle the ones. Then what do I do? What do I do with those ones?
Then you count them up.
I count them. I have
1.
1, 1. So what goes in my ones place?
1.
Oh, wait. Colin, how many ones cubes do we need?
Oh, 3.
3. Not 1, but 3. So go ahead and add 2 more. Because that would be 61. Remember, don't get confused. Don't let the smaller factor confuse you and think you have to write that many ones cubes. Yes, Sadie.
I put 3 and I was confused because I was
Yeah.
like, isn't it supposed to?
It is, sorry. So don't let that smaller factor confuse you when you're getting to ones cubes. Okay, so how many times do we repeat it?
Once.
Once. Now we take our ones color and we circle the ones. And then we do what with those ones, Cullen?
Count them up.
How many ones do we have?
3.
3. So what goes in our ones place?
3.
Okay. Now what do we do?
Circle the tens.
We circle all the tens. What do we do with those circled tens?
Count them up.
Count them. Let's count them. 1,
1,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So what goes in our tens place?
6.
6. So that means 63 times 1 is
63.
63. Okay. Next one. I might run out of ones to do, which means we might not all get to do one. Because have you noticed what we have not done yet? What have we not had to do? Victoria? We haven't regrouped yet, and there's a reason for that. So, I might run out of things to do.
I know one.
What?
3 times 20.
That's on your independent practice stuff. Okay.
64 times 4. 64 times 4.
You can't do that. Because it would require regrouping, and we haven't talked about how to regroup yet. Kingston?
40 times 3.
We can't do 40 times 3, but we'll do 40 times 2. And then I think we're going to have to move on, so that means you can just work on your independent practice. So if you need to fix, or if you need to finish, you can do that. Zari, what do I do first?
You model.
Model what?
You model 4 times 40 times 2.
I model 40 times 2. Do I model 40? Or do I model 2? Or do I model both?
40.
40. How do I model 40?
4 10.
4
10
tens.
marks.
1, 2, 3, 4. 4 tens and how many ones, Zari?
0 1.
No ones. Okay, now this 2. Do I model 2? What do I do with this 2? What does this 2 tell me to do?
That just tells you to do it again.
I have to repeat my larger factor, the smaller factor number of times. So I take 40 and I repeat my model twice. Try to give yourself room so that you realize it's not just one big number. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I've modeled 40 times 2. What do I do now? Zari?
You would get your color and do your ones, but we don't have it.
So I get my ones color and I circle my ones. Do I have any ones, Zari?
No.
Does that mean that nothing goes in the ones place?
No, 0 goes in the ones place.
Excellent, because I can't skip the ones place, otherwise my number doesn't look right. And my number isn't right. So I have 0 ones, so I need to put 0 in the ones place. Now what do I do, Zari?
You would circle your 10 rows.
I take my tens color and I circle all my tens. Now what?
You count them.
I count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So where does that 8 go, Zari?
In the tens place.
In the tens place. So that means 40 times 2 is
80.
80. Very good. Okay. Now that you have time, you have until it's time to pack up, so that's like 40 minutes to finish your independent practice. Make sure that you are modeling every single one. Use that sheet of clean paper that you used as a bookmark in your textbook to show your models for the word problems. If you finish with the independent practice, you may work on the front of your homework, the front only. Remember, you have another sheet of clean paper in your take-home folder for the homework. Don't use the same one for independent practice, this practice we just did, and your homework. Does everybody understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Once you're finished with independent practice, if you did not finish with grammar, you may finish your grammar. Okay? Once you're finished with independent practice, if you have not finished science independent practice, that comes before anything else. Math independent practice, actually you have a choice. You can work on math independent practice right now, or you can finish science independent practice. But if you're already finished with science independent practice, you don't have a choice. You must do math independent practice, then you have a choice. Do the front of homework or read. Unless you have breakfast for your brain, then breakfast for your brain gets done after math independent practice. Or if you have grammar independent practice, then that gets done after math independent practice. We have like 40 minutes, so go ahead. At this point, if you have questions, I will come.